What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Miles Away. Now today, I'm really excited to talk to you about a brand new synth VST plugin from Toybox Audio, BuzzZone. Now BuzzZone is the follow-up to an excellent free plugin that I covered a few months ago called Thump One from Toybox Audio. You can check it out in the description somewhere up there. Check out my video there, download the plugin, it's completely free. But basically, the short story is that Thump One was an amazing free percussion synthesizer that sounded great, but most importantly, had a really unique streamlined workflow. Now BuzzZone takes those same lessons and that same great workflow and brings it to a fully featured poly synth with an excellent retro vintage flavor. At its core, BuzzZone lets you take wavetables, put them through really excellent sounding analog modeled filters, and then combine that with a lo-fi PCM style sample, or you can load your own sample as well, load your own wavetables. But the core of the tone, I really feel, comes from having these retro style wavetable and sample combination patches with a really modern, streamlined workflow that Toybox's plugins are known for. Firstly, big shout out to Toybox Audio for reaching out to sponsor a video again. I had a great time working with them last time and I really enjoy this synth. And secondly, thank you so much for watching. If you do want to check out this plugin, learn more, get a copy for yourself, it's on sale right now for $25 using the link in the description, which I think is a pretty great value for how many really great sounding samples, wavetables, and the workflow you're getting. If you like this kind of retro, rompler, early digital style sound synth, you're gonna really enjoy it and it's definitely worth 25 bucks in my opinion. Thanks so much for watching and let's get started. All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed that demo song. Well, the genre was definitely a little bit of a throwback to some of my more dance music style tones, but hopefully the character of BuzzZone came through because yeah, to me it sounds really great. It's got that instant sort of retro vintage vibe with the built-in wavetable and sample library. And it really sounds great for those wavetable deep basses and really evolving pads. Next up, let's look at the controls. Let's look at how the plugin works. If you've used Thump One before, which you definitely should, again, it's totally free, then you'll be very familiar with this. But if you haven't, I'll go through each of the features, design a track, and we can see what this really excels at. All right, here we are on the front UI of BuzzZone. And as you can tell right away, if you've used Thump One, their other plugin, the UI is really similar with this ingenious layout of different parameters, primary, secondary, and each one having its own multi-stage envelope, right? So we can go ahead and we'll initialize a preset. You also get some really cool features like randomize and mutate from Thump One that I covered in Thump One, so I'm not gonna cover here, but those are really fun. Let's start by initializing a preset, and the first thing you'll notice compared to Thump One is that this synth is polyphonic. It's designed to play chords. So just like Thump One, our sound is created by combining a synth with a sample. But the style of samples they've chosen And the style of synth sounds they've chosen have been totally overhauled from the ground up to make that classic early 90s, late 80s, early digital synthesis sound possible. So now that we know what the synth excels at, let's learn how to use it and design a really cool digital wavetable retro sound. So we'll start by choosing our wavetable. There's a whole bunch of options that are included, and you can load your own wavetables in as well, which is awesome. I'm gonna go for one of the really unique ones, like a vocal wavetable. Now these are all old school retro style vocal wavetables, similar to what you'd find on my third wave here or a PPG wave. They sound really great. They've got a lot of character, which I think is sometimes something that wavetable libraries miss. I'm really liking that. Now I'm also gonna go into the global settings here and change the polyphony to 5 and change the high quality filters to on. So it uses more CPU, but it sounds really nice and high res. So let's go back to our sound. We can add another interval, either a fifth above, third, octave, unison. I kind of like unison, to be honest. That's pretty sweet. Like, already right there, loving that sound, and it was just a few clicks away. We have a secondary unison knob too if we want even more girth and power. Here we can control the detune amount, and then this is the unison amount. So this is kind of like if you want that classic super saw sound, if I were to just quickly change to a basic. Let's go find a sawtooth here. Let's find our sawtooth. There we go. Instant super saws. Really, really great for that classic Roland JD 8000 super saw sound that made trance music in the early 2000s famous. If you're into that, if you're a music history nerd like me. But anyways, we'll go back to our vocal sample here, our vocal wavetable rather, and let's ease it back on the detune here. All right, next up we have our position, and this is where I'm going to showcase one of the coolest things about Toybox Audio synths, which is that each of these sections has its own unique envelope, and we'll get back to that when we look at the top controls as well. But for example, if I wanted to just make a really intense pitch drop to make the synth have a bit more of an attack, we can do that. Actually, I quite like that. Without affecting any of the other ones. So now look, unison, if I were to make it start really unisoned, I don't know if that's a word, and detuned, and then it evens out, right? Maybe we'll have a little bit of that. These kinds of little marginal changes really do go a long way in terms of making the synth sound more alive, making your programming sound more professional and more full. Kind of like that. But what I really want to automate here is the position. So we have this wonderful wavetable position here, and the bottom will actually offset the interval. If we remember, we have an octave or a unison interval. This bottom will offset the interval, so we can already get some interesting harmonic and timbral shifts here. So I'm already liking that, and let's go ahead and do some crazy morphing envelopes. There we go. Just like that, sounding beautiful. Next up, we have our very, very good sounding filters. I'm extremely picky about filters on VSTs. I think certain synths are let down software synths by their filters. I'm happy to say that the filter on Buzzone is really, really great sounding, and you get a whole bunch of awesome different options. So you actually get the option to use 4-pole, ladder, OTA, Salin key from the MS-20, and a whole bunch of really interesting ones as well. I quite like the sound of the ladder filter, so we're going to use that. Let's add resonance. Really cool, right? Self-resonant filter. They really behave a lot like analog filters, which is great to see. So let's go ahead and use our filter envelope to make a nice sort of attack style brassy sound. We should probably turn off the resonance. Sorry in advance for your ears. Cool, so I'm liking that. We've got FM. Use that a little bit. The bottom knob is the FM pitch here. I find on pads this is best done subtly, but it's great for making really crazy bass sounds as well too. And then we've got our amplitude envelope. So here is where we're going to really shape the sound, and we can use this other top one, which is going to be release. So let's go ahead and shape the attack stage. Awesome. And here we'll control the release. I want my pad to ring out for a long time. Let's also do a little bit of envelope work for the FM. So we're going to make the FM come in over time and then disappear. There we go, we got a really nice digital style choir pad, but we're not done yet. So before we get to the sample and make a really interesting attack stage, I'm gonna show you what these other knobs do up on the top. So we've got our master pitch, really useful for detuning, and then we've got a stereo spread effect, which sounds great. Just like that, the pad is nice and wide. Really cool, right? Let's actually play with the amplitude FM. We get two types of FM here. I definitely like that one better. Really cool evolving pad, and it has that retro character, right? It's not quite as, modern digital as some other VSTs. Anyways, sample. So if you're familiar at all with the idea of PCM samples or romplers, now I'm not an expert on this, but that's a very famous style of hardware synth that was famous in the 90s, where because memory was so limited, they were able to only have short little attacks that were usually lo-fi samples that would then turn into a synth patch after. And this would basically try to, help you get something that was a bit more realistic, and it created a really, really famous sound of the 90s of the era. So let's turn that down. Maybe we'll turn it down an octave. Right, so we get the start of a real flute sample, a lo-fi flute sample, and then it turns into a really cool choir after. I'm gonna try to find something that's a bit more interesting to combine it with. So something like a full-on long held sample, like a pad or a super saw or a lead. Let's hear this. That's not bad. Let's try something else here. So classics. What about a pad? Oh, that's the one right there. Nice lo-fi vocal pad. So we can go ahead and we can change our filter here. Now we have simpler filters for sure, but they're still really great sounding. We can do interesting stuff like ring mod. Crusher. I think we already have enough distortion on this side for this patch, but you can see it's not just your typical low pass, band pass, high pass. We get some really interesting filter options for both sides here. Now below here is a filter specific parameter, but for most of them it's drive. If you see this, if the icon changes, below the pitch rather, we also get basically the ability to change the detune. So I'm really liking this sound as is right now. So let's go ahead and we'll add in some more stereo spread. I tend to like this around like halfway or just a little bit below. And then we have a whole suite of effects. So if I grab the distortion and play a low note, huge, sounds like Blade Runner. We could also try, where is it here? The wave folder, which is really cool too. Those are some of my favorites. Oh yeah. There we go. All right, well, that's where I'm gonna wrap things up for today. But before we jump to the factory preset playthrough, let's talk about some pros and cons quick. Pros, this is a great sounding synth. It really has a specific character. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. If you like those early digital style sounds like the PPG Wave, Roland JD8000, Yamaha DX7, you're really gonna like this. The best sounding sounds that Buzzone does, in my opinion, are when you're making complex evolving wavetable pads or interesting keys that start with a sample for the attack, a lo-fi PCM sample, and then transform into something more interesting and evolving after. It can definitely do basses, leads, classic analog stuff as well, but I think the real strength of Buzzone is leaning into this early digital, retro digital style sound because it's a really unique sound, especially if you don't have a synth that can cover this already. Secondly, the price. For 25 bucks, you're getting a really great sample library, a really great filter library, as well as a really great wavetable library. And you can always load your own wavetables and samples if you just want to take advantage of the really excellent workflow of this synth, the really interesting sounding FM, and the great sounding filters. On the con side, I only have a couple small things, but mainly my main con is that it would be really nice to be able to set the global settings and then just forget about them. I found it kind of annoying to, in between scrolling through presets, have to go back and change my polyphony amount and the quality of the filters. Similarly, around polyphony, currently the polyphony of this synth is limited to 5 notes at a time, which seems rather low in my opinion for a digital VST synth. I know that this synth is fairly CPU intensive, so maybe they did that to avoid latency or crackling, but it would be great to have the option to go up to at least 8, because again, with a plugin like this, I want to be making these big, massive chords, and I don't really want voice stealing. So hopefully they can address those two things in a future update, but besides that, I think this is a great sounding synth. It's great value for your money, and it might be able to add a unique flavor into your arsenal if you don't have a retro wavetable PCM style synth yet. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Miles Away. Thanks again to Toybox Audio for sponsoring this video, and let's check out some factory presets to play us out.